The alleged first character of the DCEU has arrived, with Blue Beetle now out in theaters. When it comes to Xolo Maridueña, I've been a fan of his since I first saw him appear in Cobra Kai back when it was premiering on YouTube Red. And he does a really good job transferring over from the small screen onto the big screen in this role. He's definitely shown that he has the charm and charisma to lead a big blockbuster like this, and he does that really well in this first outing. He's also extremely benefited by the fact that Blue Beetle is really a family story, so there's a lot of other family members in this movie that share the screen with Xolo. And that aspect of the movie is where it really shines. When this cast is all together on screen, the chemistry, the dynamics that they have created with these characters, it is so kinetic, it is so authentic, it is so fun and joyous to watch. Especially getting George Lopez in here, which is the family member that Xolo's Blue Beetle will interact with the most throughout the film. They had a really great on-screen presence together. They had great chemistry. I really enjoyed the character dynamic that those actors created as well. Another pro of this movie is the Blue Beetle action. Now, this movie was originally supposed to go to streaming directly on HBO Max. The decision to put this in theaters was almost last minute, and I think it was a very good decision because when you watch these action sequences on the big screen, that's kind of where they feel they belong. I'm not going to say the action in this was groundbreaking or anything that memorable. In fact, there's not that many action sequences in this movie, and when they do come, they don't last very long, but they are helmed very well, and when they are presented on screen, it is a blast to watch Blue Beetle, see what his technology, see what his abilities are. There's a lot of dynamic to the choreography going on with these action sequences, and when they were on screen, I was enjoying watching them. But I'm not going to lie, for me, Blue Beetle, it came with a lot of shortcomings. Now, it's true that this movie kind of has the disadvantage of coming 15 years after the kickoff of the MCU, and after audiences have seen such an amount of comic book movies in the past, especially if you've caught every single one that's come out since 2008. Because even though Blue Beetle is a character that's been around since like the 1930s, there are moments in this movie where you're going, yep, that looks like Iron Man. I remember that from like Ant-Man. I remember seeing that in Spider-Man. I remember seeing that in Venom. And while if you're looking for those similarities, it can become a little distracting, for me, that wasn't a problem at all. The biggest problem for me with Blue Beetle was honestly just a lot of elements in the story. Because I know there's this big movement going on with the Blue Beetle Battalion, and a lot of you guys want me to love this movie, but if I'm going to be on here, I gotta be honest with you. This movie did not have me 100% engaged the entire time. And a lot of that is because I didn't really find the story that interesting. Amidst the landscape of superhero movies that we are in today, this story was pretty generic. The story mostly had to deal with the fact that this character's powers come from a sacred scarab that was stolen from some enemies, and the enemies want it back. Which, by just me saying that, you can tell we've seen this 1,000 times. But it wasn't even just the fact that we saw it 1,000 times. I just think the execution of it wasn't that great. These villains suck. Like, just straight up, these villains were awful. The movie really did not dedicate much time to these villains at all. They hardly had any motivation set up. They were just evil for evil's sake, as far as I could tell. And a lot of the time, they feel non-existent in this movie. It feels like this movie forgets about these villains for like 80% of its runtime. And when they do pop back up, you just don't care what's going on with them. You don't care what they're after. You don't care what they're trying to do. I hardly even felt a conflict that was set up between the villains and our Blue Beetle, which especially hurt during the obligated hero versus villain final battle in the third act. And to make matters worse, the movie tries to set up this storyline for one of the villains, but it comes so late in the movie that when it popped up, it just felt like too little too late, and it was completely unearned. On top of that, I felt there was a lot of elements in this story that felt very underdeveloped to me. A majority of what our heroes are trying to do in this movie is figure out what exactly this Scarab is, and we don't really ever find out that much information about the Scarab. The movie presents this idea that the whole thing about Blue Beetle is this Scarab and its host, they have to have the symbiotic connection. But the movie didn't really explore that idea very much. Which, if they were trying to save that for a sequel, I totally get it, but they just spent so much time on it in this movie that it just ended up feeling like the movie was going nowhere to me. With that said, I really didn't hate this movie. There were some segments I actually did enjoy. I already mentioned the family. The transformation scene that you've seen in the trailer where Xolo first gets the Scarab onto him and he transforms into the Blue Beetle, that was a really funny and awesome scene to watch in the theater. I really enjoyed that scene. So when there were moments like that, when the family was all on screen together, I was having a decent time watching this movie, but the rest of this movie, to me, it was just a little too generic and underdeveloped. I do think the good outweighs the not even bad of this movie, but the mediocre and generic of this movie. And for that reason, I'm going to give Blue Beetle a weak recommend. I will say, though, that the family dynamic was strong enough, and I did enjoy Xolo in the Blue Beetle outfit enough that I would not mind if this really was the first character in the DCU, and these characters carry on into James Gunn's much-needed reboot. Anyway, guys, those are all my thoughts and opinions on Blue Beetle. Congratulations to the 40% of you who predicted what my rating was going to be, and to the other 60% of you who wanted it to be higher. That was just my opinion. Now I want to hear your opinion, so comment down below. Let me know all your thoughts and opinions about Blue Beetle, guys. And if you're new here and you haven't heard, we've got a subscriber goal on this channel. We want to hit 2,500 subscribers before the end of the year. If you like talking movies, if you like talking DC, we do that a lot over here. We'd love for you to join our little community to do so. Why don't you go on and hit that subscribe button on your way out? As always, guys, thank you so much for hearing me out, and I hope to talk to you guys again real soon.